You can message them throughout and I'll not interrupt, but we'll leave time for questions throughout it. And there will be time at the end for questions, but you can ask them as you have them and we'll work it into the presentation. So I guess, Lissa, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. Okay. So welcome everyone. My name is Lissa Thiele, and I am obviously the presenter of this presentation. It's called Tell Your Truth, Girls Overcoming Complex Trauma in Mainstream Classrooms. So currently right now, I am one of the education consultants at Article 9 Educational Consulting. And that is actually a life skills coaching, academic advising, and career and college readiness mentorship program that helps probationers and parolees re-enter society and their communities. So that is the educational consultant piece of what I do. On my own personal time, I volunteer as a juvenile justice commissioner in Santa Clara County. And I have a feeling some of the commissioners are out there right now. So I'm going to just give a little shout out to the commission. What's up? Okay, so that's what I volunteer as. And then my daytime job, my actual job right now, is I'm the Justice Family Education Coordinator in the Alternative Education Department at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And it's a partnership position with the Office of Reentry Services. And basically it provides services specifically built for incarcerated parents or parents who are on probation and parole. So when I start my presentations, I really want to try and ground us in where I want us to be thinking in sort of this bird's eye view overall. And so I love this resource, the rightsforgirls.org. I think they do amazing work and they put out a report, and part of the report is this is in their report. And actually, I like their work so much, I actually included their link and a little quote from them in my presentation description. So girls in the juvenile justice system are disproportionately victims of sexual violence, and girls' common age-appropriate reactions to the trauma are criminalized and exacerbated by the involvement in the juvenile justice system. And in addition, the mental health diagnoses for our justice-engaged girls is at 80%, while our boys are at 67%. So I do want to highlight for a second. So we're mental health diagnoses for our justice engaged girls at 80%. I do want to say, so 80% for girls, 67% for boys. I think we have a problem here because even the boys' percentage number is over 50%. So that is a significant number for both groups. The way that our presentation is going to work. So basically, I'm sure you can tell from this already, I am a teacher at heart. And so I am basically doing a presentation right now that I would be doing in front of any of my classrooms that I work with. I love doing this. I love integrating the adverse childhood experience, trauma-informed education work into mainstream classrooms. So the first thing we're going to do, as we are now, is that we're participating in the Google slide presentation. We're going to learn an assortment of different things around basic understanding of adverse childhood experiences and the importance of trauma-informed education. We're going to understand a little bit of the best practices that go along with the adverse childhood experiences, in particular, the gender-specific needs of our girls and women. The second part of our presentation is going to be a case study. Actually, it's a couple of case studies we're going to look at, well, what does it take? What does it look like for programs that actually are successful at helping students who are justice engaged re-enter their communities, or to catch them before justice engagement? We're going to be looking at different success stories that we know we all can do. They're very basic, but they're pretty amazing. Lastly, the We Do activity, we're actually going to, now this is super hard on a virtual platform. But basically what's going to happen is I'm going to run a little mini social emotional learning lab that I've developed. They're called Respect Labs. And the Respect Lab itself, while you and I won't necessarily get to participate the way that we normally would in a classroom, we do have the chat and we do have somebody monitoring the chat, which is great. But then also I'm going to show a couple of examples of what the Respect Lab looks like. So we're going to kind of get a bird's eye view. One of my students, her name is Anna. One of my students is actually present somewhere in this Zoom room space. So I want to give Anna a shout out because Anna was like wonderful enough to let us, one, record her session with me, but two, to be allowed to share it with all of you so we can use it as a learning experience. It is pretty awesome. So Anna, shout out to you. I'm looking forward to some of your comments in the chat. Finally, the you do part of this, I'm going to send you home with resources. As every good teacher does, I'm sending you home with a resource list. I'm sending you home with this presentation with all the links that I'm using so that you can always refer to it just in case you need it. All right, we're going to level the playing field right now with adverse childhood experiences. Some of you are experts in the field. I'm a teacher. So where I come from as an expert in the field is what I'm doing in my mainstream classroom and those lived experiences that my students are having and that we're having together in the classroom. So while some of you are experts, I appreciate that. Some of you have never heard of adverse childhood experiences, and that's awesome because you will be learning a lot here. Some of you know a little bit about it. Some of you know a lot about it. A lot of the things that we're going to be saying here, you'll be thinking like, well, duh, that makes total sense to me, right? But yet we haven't actually taken those duh moments and been like, we actually should do something about it. So here we go. The essential questions that we will be looking at here are, what are ACEs? ACEs is the abbreviation for adverse childhood experiences. And that means experiences that students have experienced on or before their 18th birthday. What does the data actually tell us about the prevalence of ACEs in all of our institutions and community-based organizations? Do ACEs prevent any of my students or clients from accessing academic material? Okay, this one's a big one for me, but you can already tell that because I'm a teacher. Okay, why is it important for schools, institutions, and organizations to learn and implement best practices in trauma-informed education? How do ACEs uniquely affect girls and women? Okay, what are solutions-based approaches to help our target populations reset on healthy trajectories? So ACEs, or the ACE science, refers to research that's been done on the prevalence and consequences of adverse childhood experiences and perhaps different ways that we might be able to prevent some of the consequences. It's comprised of an assortment of data points that we'll be looking at these data points. But one thing I really like, I'm about to show this short video here. And this basically is ACEs 101. It gives us a very brief understanding, a very basic understanding of ACEs, but it also allows us to think about this in a way, oftentimes, and I'll give the trigger warning now, we're going to be dealing with adverse childhood experiences as we just continue the discussion. A video like this, what we're doing, allows for an easy an easy landing right into something that actually is very hard to talk about. So what I'm hoping is, as we watch this quick clip, that you will be able to gain at least one piece of knowledge about yourself, about other family members or friends that you didn't know before. So let me go ahead and I already practiced sharing the screen. So let's see what happens here.
That face that is usually covered by her phone has finally made an appearance.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease? If your mother had a drinking problem when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression as an adult? Here's what you should know about ACEs. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, extremely stressful events that can happen to a child growing up. Some experiences are so stressful that they can alter brain development, as well as the immune system, increasing the risk of lifelong health and social problems in adulthood. The term comes from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. landmark research that shed new light on the root cause of everything from stroke and liver disease to substance abuse and mental illness. In the late 1990s, an epidemiologist from the Centers for Disease Control and a preventive medicine doctor at Kaiser Permanente set out to understand the association between childhood experience and lifelong health. They asked over 17,000 people in the Kaiser Health Plan in San Diego about their health history, as well as difficult questions about their experiences growing up. Anda and Felidi tallied up 10 different kinds of adversity in this largely middle-class and college-educated population. They were stunned to see how common ACEs were. 21% of all respondents were sexually abused as children. 19% grew up with someone who suffered mental illness. 28% had been physically abused. And 2 out of 3 respondents had experienced at least one ACE. The researchers next looked at how someone's ACE score, or the number of adversities they experienced, related to a wide array of serious health and social problems. They saw that the more ACEs someone had, the greater their risk for poor outcomes compared with someone with no ACEs. Someone with an ACE score of 4 had twice the risk of heart disease and cancer. Someone with an ACE score of 5 had an 8 times greater chance of being an alcoholic. And those with an ACE score of 6 or more, on average, died 20 years earlier. With every major problem they looked at in the ACE study, the risk went up for each additional adverse experience in childhood. As Dr. Robert Anda says, what's predictable is preventable. It's important to remember that ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are a tool for understanding the health of a population as a whole. For individuals, an ACE score can be a tool for understanding their own risk for health and social problems and empower them to make changes for themselves and their children. ACEs tend to get passed down from generation to generation and are common across all income levels, races, and cultures. But increasingly, people of all different professions and backgrounds are coming together to discuss how ACEs affect their communities. They're finding new ways to treat and prevent ACEs. Many doctors are starting to screen their patients for ACEs as part of their medical history. More schools are becoming trauma-informed, considering the source of problem behavior when disciplining their students, instead of immediately suspending or expelling them. To learn more about interrupting the cycle of adversity and improving health and well-being for the next generation, please visit kpjrfilms.co.
Okay, thank you for your patience on that. Okay, great. So there were 10 different types of childhood trauma that were discussed in this little video. I know when I watched it, I really felt like so many of my students might be going through this and I had no idea about that. And obviously it's important to note in that video, it did actually address the fact that there are the mental health care providers, right? And then there are also teachers. So I just want to make it clear once again, because sometimes this line gets really, it's a real issue with teachers, and I'm sure it's a real issue from the like counselor's angle, right? There's only so much information that they're able to share with us, but we can do something with that information, especially if we know this. It also would have been really, really helpful to know some of this stuff earlier, right? Why wasn't I learning this way earlier? Don't you think it'd be important for our students to know that if their parents or somebody in their immediate family had an addiction or had opioid use disorder, that they would be 9 times more likely to actually have something like that? If we could cut that off at the pass, that would seriously make a huge, huge difference. So, and what they said in the video was, what's predictable is preventable. What's difficult about the adverse childhood experiences is that when you look at these, all of them are preventable. Children do not need to go through these. Or if they do, there's other ways of being able to help support them. So I do just want to mention a couple of important things, as you saw in the video. So nearly 2/3 of all of those surveys had experienced at least one ACE, and that basically the higher the ACE score, the more likely it was that people were going to be in poor health, heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, obesity, diabetes, depression, and substance abuse. Okay. So this is one of my favorite slides of the presentation, because for me, it's like one of the most passion building pieces to what I do and why I do what I do. And yet at the same time, I actually don't really like how the graph is set up, because it could actually seem a little bit confusing. So I'm going to do my best on explaining this. So basically what happened was there were other research points that came out of studying ACEs. And there were a couple of patterns that we were able to start to see as far as the number of ACEs and whether or not that number of ACEs affects the ability of our students to access learning in mainstream classrooms, which, by the way, that would be equal opportunity. When we exclude our students who have 5 ACEs or more, or even 3 ACEs or more, as you can see here, that's not equal access to education. And so that needs to end, that needs to stop. They deserve to be in the classroom as well. So anyway, you can see here, what this is saying is that of the bucket of people, of students who had no known adverse childhood experiences, of that general bucket, approximately 34% of those students had at least one academic concern that was starting to come out. And then you can see the steady incline as you go up, with 1 reported adverse event, 2 reported, and 3 reported. Remember, 5 is complex. So the fact that 3 is on here should really tell us something. Now, here's the part where it's passion burning for me. 3 or more ACEs, that means that of the bucket of students who have 3 or more ACEs, we know that they will have at least one academic concern. In my classrooms, in mainstream classrooms, let's say we have 25 to 30 students. So I know that there are going to be students statistically in my classroom now that are going to have 3 or more ACEs. Knowing that, why would I not write the curriculum to include some inclusive practices? And we will get to that when we do our social emotional learning lab, the respect labs, and tell your truth. Every student could benefit from the types of supports and what did we used to call scaffolding? Scaffolding, that's what we used to call it, scaffolding. It's our job as educators to meet this need. And I'm sad to say that it hasn't been met, but it doesn't mean that we stop. It means that we keep on trying and we do it even more, even harder. And so this chart right here, really, to me, it points out a lot about this is predictable that our students with this, knowing they have 3 ACEs, then it's predictable to know that they're going to need academic support and they can get that support. I told you I was really passionate about that. Okay, now, so we looked at some of that. So I want to take a quick snapshot here because I'm in Santa Clara County, California. And there's a fabulous nonprofit organization. It's called kidsincommon.org. And every year Kids in Common puts out a data book, and what they do is they take all of the data from all the various stakeholders and they put it in one beautiful, beautiful booklet. And as you can see, this is so teacher style that it's like falling apart book because I use it so much, because it really does give just a general quick snapshot of what's up. So now we have that 80% that we were just working with for 3 or more ACEs. Okay, who is actually graduating on time in Santa Clara County? These are the numbers from 2018 to 2020. And what you can see is when we look at the dark blue, that's 2020. So this is the percentage of students who graduate from high school on time. So in all of California for the year 2020, we were at 84%. In Santa Clara, we were at 80%. Now, here's where we start to see some of these the disproportionality of things going on. So the Latinx community, 73% of students graduate on time from high school. And also you can see the African-American community on there. You can see white and Asian as well. I do want to mention that some people look at this and they say, well, if you look at the population, there's way more Latinx that are in Santa Clara County, which is true. I do want to mention here that right now in Santa Clara County, and I would say for the past decade, maybe I shouldn't say decade, let's go for like 5 years, maybe we'll cut that in half. The African-American population, the Black American population here in Santa Clara County is at 2%. So that's how small that population is. Anyway, I just wanted to give a quick look at, who is in fact graduating and where do we need these extra supports. These are, by the way, public high schools in Santa Clara County. All right, now, the reason why we're here in this conference is because we are identifying that justice-engaged women and girls are disproportionately affected by adverse childhood experiences, both on a state and a national level. If you direct your attention over to these little circle pies here with percentages on them. So this was, the little caption says, girls' rate of sexual abuse is 4 times higher than boys in juvenile justice. And girls' rate of complex trauma, meaning 5 or more ACEs, is nearly twice as high. And so you can see here on this that 31 in girls in juvenile justice, remember, they did this not national scale. Girls in juvenile justice, 31% were sexually abused, while boys were at 7%. And then 45% of girls presented 5 or more ACEs, and 24% of boys presented 5 or more. Now, again, when we look at this kind of data, we really need to think about it, okay? Because we know at this point that boys underreport sexual abuse. So my guess is these numbers will be a little bit different. However, the point is taken here. So clearly, girls' rate of sexual abuse is just really 4 times higher. And that's significant. So we need to address some of those issues, both inside incarceration and outside of incarceration. Okay. This is just to give you a general snapshot so when we talk about women and girls, what are we talking about? What does this look like? How many women are in jail? How many women are in prisons, in state prisons and federal prisons? So I just wanted to give you a quick a little glimpse in here to see that there has been a steady incline on the number of women who are being incarcerated. And so I think that, this is obviously a growing problem, and there's an assortment of things that are attached to gender specific needs of women, obviously in incarceration. I also wanted to just give a little background again, because of when we talk about girls who are incarcerated. And so you can see here my source, but it says though 15% of incarcerated youth are girls, they make up a much higher proportion of those incarcerated for the lowest level offenses. So 36% of youth incarcerated for status offenses, such as truancy and curfew violations, are girls. More than half of youth incarcerated for running, more than half the youth are incarcerated for running away are girls. Overall, 1/3 of incarcerated girls are held for status offenses for violating the terms of probation. See, this right here is really upsetting, I think, and I'm not sure if you're upset by it, but I am, because when you look at the status offenses, truancy and curfew violations, this is what is so upsetting. So first of all, those are not offenses for adults. So we're getting justice, and we're getting girls justice engaged at young ages. We now see some of their recidivism rates, and we're putting them in for violations of truancy and curfew. I do want to mention here with what, like, I'm going to give an example with one of my students. One of my students who is Latina was, she had a girlfriend, and she was having a relationship with a girlfriend. At home in her Latina household, her sexuality was not honored by her family. In fact, she was told that it was a phase, and that's that. So she was not able to play out a healthy relationship with her girlfriend in the appropriate times where kids might go on dates or whatnot. Instead, because it wasn't allowed, she had to have her relationship with her girlfriend basically at school. And so truancy and curfew violations were the norm in their relationship. And why does she get justice engaged? Because she's trying to have a relationship with somebody in which culturally that is not accepted. This is how complicated this stuff is, right? But now with that example, you can kind of see how this goes. The chart over to the right shows you the growing proportion of teenage girls who are arrested. So you can see it's been a steady incline, although, yeah, it's pretty much been a steady incline, I will say. From like 2010 to 2018, it's been moving up a little bit less of a slope than what we see from 1980s to, let's say, like 2000. Okay. Again, this from the data book, but I did just want to show some of the numbers, at least for Santa Clara County. Again, I like giving you little snippets of where I'm from so that you can see the type of research that we're doing over here. So you can see here all the way on the right, I just want to point your attention to sex and age of youth arrested. So 78% of the youth arrested in Santa Clara County during 2019 through 2020, 78% were male. And 45% of the youth arrested were 15 to 16 years old, which is consistent with some other things we'll talk about. 33% were 17 years or older, which we'll also talk about shortly. And 3% were 12 years old and younger. So hopefully that makes us stop and think. As a teacher in general, when I hear ages like 11 and 12, or where I hear kids are being suspended and expelled at ages 11 and 12, for me as an educator, it's totally preventable. And I'm not sure where the other support systems were on this, but this does happen, and it happens all the time. And it disproportionately happens to our students of color. Anyway, so you can check out our resources on this. You can download the data book, but you can see and visit Kids in Common on that to get that data book. But you can see the types of percentages that we're dealing with in our youth in the juvenile justice system here in Santa Clara County. Okay, great. Let's do like a deep breath in, a deep breath out, because now we're going to be moving forward. Okay. We have discussed ACEs. You've seen me get very emotionally passionate about this stuff. And I think at the moment, we just have a general understanding at this point, a little bit more knowledge about ourselves and our health, but also a little bit more knowledge about how, what our juvenile justice girls and women are up against when it comes to the disproportionality of the adverse childhood experiences for our girls of color. So there's a couple of different pathways to success when it comes to looking at what other solutions-based approaches are. And some of that has to do with education, right? Educational awareness, which to me is like the creme de la creme of what we are doing at a conference like this, right? So we're going to talk about two different pathways. One, briefly, because this isn't my area of study. However, once again, I want to center us around, like, level the baseball field out here for everyone when we talk about what are the basic needs of girls' health. But then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of these reentry solutions that can be done at schools, institutions, and community-based organizations. There's a couple of different things that are going on in our community right now that I would say are very much centered around solutions-based reimagining recidivism, reimagining the correctional system, reimagining the criminal justice system. So the very first pathway we're going to look at is basically, what are girls' barriers to survive and thrive? See, the health of our girls as they get to us, for example, as in mainstream high school classes, the health of my ladies when they walk through the classroom door deeply, deeply matters to how those students are going to be able to access their education in my classroom. So the first step to providing these safe spaces for our girls to develop their social emotional intelligence is actually not sitting them down and telling them what emotional intelligence is. Rather, it's to ensure that they have access to crucial health needs that can prevent some of the adverse childhood experience consequences and the experience itself. So again, I have a short clip. I have no doubt that YouTube will put an advertisement first, so hang in there for me as we do this. But again, so this is a brief, simple, quick way. I actually find it quite inspirational. Some of you may get teary-eyed. Sometimes I do, so we'll see what happens after this. But this is just a simplistic way to look at what are just, if we could reset girls on healthy trajectories, what might that look like from a health perspective? So as we just saw, again, simplistic in its format. The first time I saw this video was on International Women's Day. And I was teaching at an all-girls school, and one of my students brought it to my attention. And actually that was the year it had come out. And they showed it at one of the assemblies. And I thought that it was just an incredible way, a very powerful way of putting together the importance of having those healthy life trajectories. And I do want to say, when I work with my ladies inside of incarceration, many of them actually followed that path that we already saw. They were pregnant by 15. We have an epidemic of women having babies in prisons and jails, right? So they also, some of my ladies have HIV. They never learned about it. They never knew about it. And again, these are totally preventable women's health needs that really, really need to be discussed and taught. And by the way, that we know for a fact, I can tell you this, right? We're sitting in the United States, and I don't want to, we're a first world country, right? The way that women are treated and used and abused in other countries is something that we have to fight for all the time, for women's rights, no matter what, because it might be going okay for some of us here. It might not be, but it's definitely not okay in other places and what's going on there. Anyway, that's my little healthy life trajectory thing. So now we'll move into the other pathway. So the ladies need to walk into the classroom with basic health needs met. And then what happens? Well, we need to look at what some of the reentry solutions could look like, after school programming, during school programming, and what type of people does it take to be able to help students to reset on healthy life trajectories like this. And many of you are the solutions-based approach. The fact that we're at a conference here right now is a solutions-based approach to trying to solve these complex issues. So we're going to look at a couple of different programs now that have success. So the first case study we're going to look at here was actually it's rooted in a documentary. The documentary is called The Bad Kids. And when I first saw this documentary, it came to the attention of the juvenile justice commissioners many years ago. And this documentary actually is pivotal in sort of igniting in me the transition from working with 12th graders and then working with students inside of incarceration, the adults. And what I found to be true was that students had adopted a particular label that they felt was given to them based on the level of behavioral punishment that was happening at school, right? And a while ago, we used to make kids stand in the corner, right? And so a lot of students will internalize the bad kid label, and then they will live out that label. We're going to take a brief look at some aspects of this documentary because they're really excellent case studies in here. And it's made in a way that hopefully is not super triggering, but yet allows us to be both on the surface level and then super deep in these case studies. And you can decide how you want to address this. Do you want to stay, we can stay surface level, or we can go deep? I'm sure you can tell what I usually do. So the essential questions I want us thinking about right now, we're going to watch something really quickly again, that I think you'll love. But so the essential questions for this are, in what ways can trauma affect students' academic success and social emotional well-being? Well, we saw that chart. Remember that chart, that graph that just drives me insane. And so what type of effect does that have on a student? What does that do to them? And then the documentary takes place at a high school that's called Black Rock High School. It's in the Mojave Desert. And so the students in the high school and the documentary really teach us about the role of trauma, of how to be resilient. And resiliency is something we'll talk about in a little bit, but that is completely undervalued in this country, in this world, and on job applications and college applications. Resiliency is undervalued as one of the best strengths a person can have to make it through adversity. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show the trailer of the documentary. The actual documentary is on the handout, the resource sheet that's linked. And then also in the presentation, the Bad Kids documentary is actually linked right inside here for you. But I'm going to show us the trailer because the trailer itself, and this is what I do with my students in the classroom. We don't need to watch the whole documentary. Literally, what we need to do is watch the trailer, because the trailer really does a great job, once again, of being in a short amount of time in short sound bites here to be able to pack a serious educational punch. And that is the point of watching something like this. So again, triggering subjects will come up even in the trailer. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that. And then we'll look at some of the particular two of the ladies that we see in the trailer. Our next step will be to look at them specifically and center down on them for about 5 minutes. So let's see what we have on this time around.
Go to school, get your high school diploma. No, done.
This is what we were talking about. Where are you heading, man?
I'm not gonna beat him up.
I see what I've been through. How many other people have been through this?
I never really had a childhood. Like, other kids thought the world was all happy. I tell them, like, no, the world is actually a dark place.
Joey, I can't fix the home life. I can't fix it. Good morning. How are you guys? Are you awake yet? These kids have been hurt. So many of them are broken. They are all the outcasts.
If Black Rock didn't exist, 82 kids last year wouldn't have got a diploma.
If I got one of the sexual assault counselors to come over here, would you be willing to talk?
What do you want out of life?
I don't want to graduate from high school.
Why are you still at home? No, you gotta come to school, honey. Do you need me to come get you?
Love, 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 love. Mwah. We can't control the events that happen to us, but we can choose not to be reduced by them. I'm just gonna be strong.
I've been sitting around, watching this world go round and round, spinning my head till I hit the ground. Take a deep breath, let's leave this town,
And I'm just lost. I feel like I'm drowning in my flaws. I've seen things that I never thought I'd see, and I've been a person that I never thought I'd be, and I've been defeated, brought to my knees. Thought about things that you wouldn't believe, man.
Black Rock High School, if you would please join me in congratulating graduate number 20, David Jeffrey.
let's leave this town.
Okay, so for those of you who are educators, I told you this would be powerful. And I hope all of you actually will spend some time. It's not very long to watch this documentary, but it really, really teaches us some incredible lessons. And what's so cool about this is that teaching with documentaries, I find with all of my students, allows accessibility. And also it has captioning in multiple languages, which once again makes it accessible to so many of our students. So when we think about a classroom full of trauma, what does that look like, right? What types of supports do the students need? What are they going through? But also their teachers, their principal. You saw Miss V, she's the principal. That's a principal I could work for, no doubt, right? You want to be able to work with teams who are similar minded on this to be able to figure out important workarounds. One of the workarounds that they do in a social, emotional way is that some of our students, I had a couple of homeless students in my classroom, and they didn't have anywhere to clean their laundry, right? And so one of them used to be embarrassed about having like dirty, smelly clothes when he would come into school. So what did the school do? The school provided like a safe space for him to be able to wear like some of the some clothes that were new clothes for him, right? And we have some of those for the probationers. Sometimes the probationers, they don't have an outfit to wear to court, right? Like the Office of Reentry Services helps so much with that, right? So for so many of our kids, so in a place like Black Rock, they actually have the laundry machines on campus. What a novel approach, right? Like have them there. If the kids' pants are too big because we're upset, right? Like there was always like a lot of it is about like when you're out of uniform, so to speak, right? Well, some of those kids, as it turns out, don't have a belt. Like, I wish that we wouldn't first think, oh, they're trying to be something, right? Like, why are we not thinking maybe they don't have a belt? Keep extra belts in that closet where you have extra clothes. Anyway, it's the little things that people can do. Yes, Black Rock is set up in this type of way, but as a mainstream educator, I can have some of this in my classroom. And one thing I can do with that is actually not even make it a thing about kids not having clothes, but rather I was a history teacher. Why not have clothes set aside for like mock trials, right? So like they don't have to be embarrassed about going and getting the clothes either, right? It gives them that access. So, I mean, I think about these things all the time. And so that's why like movies like Black Rock, right? The documentary itself, change our approach and have the opportunity to change our perspectives. Okay. So what I'd like us to do now is we are going to look at a couple of the profiles of actually a couple of young women that we just saw. Now, they have created an entire website. The documentary people have created an entire website for educators and educator toolkits, which you'll see in 1 second. But I just want us to reflect because these two young women bring up some gender specific needs of our girls and women that really need to be addressed and can be addressed in an assortment of different ways. So this will take us to the website. Let me see if I can get us here. Okay. So this is the Bad Kids documentary educator toolkit. And they have both teacher feedback and student activities. So I really love this resource. And then each one of the case studies is broken down into these bucket of things, as you can see, right? So there's self-care, social and emotional learning. The one that we're going to look at right now is using trauma-informed practices. Okay, so the first young lady we're going to look at and the trauma-informed practice that we need to be thinking about here is how do we address Jennifer's needs in a way that we might be able to do in a mainstream way, even though the things that she's dealing with have to go to administration and they have to go to the school counselor. Nevertheless, us as a teacher, as an educator, as a deputy inside, right, that we're constantly thinking about what is the lens we want to use when we're thinking about the consequences of what is about to happen. So first we'll look at Jennifer's character profile.
Okay guys, time for second period, please.
My whole 7th, 8th, 9th grade year, I really don't even remember school those years. Like, they really didn't exist. When I was younger, my mom just like left. I don't know where she went. I just started living with my grandma. My dad, my real dad's just been in and out of my life. He's never really been there for me. And then when I was in grade school, my grandma's husband molested me. I was probably the most depressed teenager. I just don't think teenagers are supposed to be that depressed. We can't control the events that happen to us, but we can choose not to be reduced by them. I'm just gonna be strong. not somebody that's gonna let what happened to them break them.
You said there was drama the other night.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it's like, I wouldn't feel as responsible if he would just stop popping up, like not still doing stuff to still hurt my grandma. Like, I feel like it's my fault a lot of the time.
Okay, but Jennifer, we've talked about this before. Do you want your grandma with somebody who, first of all, does things like that to you, but secondly, who treats her that way?
If I would have just dealt with what he was doing to me and never told my grandma, he wouldn't.
Honey.
Like, I just feel like it's my fault. Like, I could have just dealt with it without having my grandma to deal with it.
No. Honey. Let me ask you this: if I got one of the counselors, but somebody like a sexual assault counselor, because it's common that the victims feel that responsibility, and you shouldn't. It's not. You can't. It's never the victim's fault. You were the victim. You're the child. You are not the adult.
I feel like it. It's just, I don't know. I want to be more focused on school, and I feel like I'm really, really trying because I really, really want to graduate this year. But I couldn't go to school yesterday because I don't like people here seeing me break down. So
Honey, we all break down here. That's what's great about it, is that you can break down here.
I know. I can break down to you here, but not.
The kids all do. And we see you see it. Everyone here who goes here has something. That's why they go here.
I know.
Jennifer there's an assortment of different needs that Jennifer has, and they are gender specific needs. So you can see here the re-victimization going on as far as Jennifer and her relationship to her grandma and her mom. She's craving a relationship with her mother. And at the end of the day, when we look at our clients and our students, at the end of the day, what do they want the most? Know that somebody, it does no judgment, but love, unconditionally. And so many of them crave that. They're seeking it. And oftentimes there are other fake kind of families, right, that provide this feeling of unconditional love, but unfortunately it's the unhealthy type. And so that's something that we always want to watch out for. One last comment about Jennifer before we go to Caitlin is that Jennifer said that when she was in school, she became the most depressed teenager ever. I have watched my students in my classroom, and I am highly aware of when their behaviors change drastically. For Jennifer, I imagine in her classrooms that her behaviors changed quite a bit once this started happening. And for her to be the most depressed teenager, that's not okay, right? Like, that's not okay that she's feeling that way. And it's something where I do know for a fact that mainstream teachers can identify. I'm not going to diagnose her because that's not my business. That's not my area. But what I can do is I can guide her, right? I can guide her to the resources, or I can acknowledge how hard this is. Empathy and compassion. That's kind of what we're building here. Okay, we're going to go to Caitlin, and then we're going to move forward a little bit on this so that we can get to the Respect Lab piece of this. So let's watch Caitlin.
Okay. Basics of baby care.
Basic baby care.
What's that?
Some doctors recommend sponge baths until the umbilical cord falls off and circumcision heals. To give a sponge bath, gather all supplies before...
We were only together for 3 months and I got pregnant.
That you would continue to bless these pregnancies, Father. God, bring them.
I already have that motherly instinct. I've started to call my cousin Tammy Mom. She's just a way better mom than my real mom is. She was drinking a lot and taking all of her prescription medicines. It's like, you're just gonna kill yourself, and I'm not gonna sit here and watch.
Black Rock High School, this is Miss Ambrosius. Hi there. We'll just see if she shows up maybe tomorrow. And then I'll give you a call tomorrow if she doesn't, and then we'll decide if we should send probation out to her. Let's give her maybe one more day.
Caitlin, she had run away on Monday because the mother had the brother of the guy who had sexually abused her in the home. Mom was, Laura and Tom, and they did a wellness check. The police have been involved. She is now living with cousin. We don't have a caregiver's form yet, I know. But just know that she's at risk right now. She needs tender, loving care.
A safe haven is like somewhere you can go and kind of get away from everything. You can just be like, you know what, I'm going to school.
How are you? Tired because you've been working so hard, right? Good morning. I'm glad you're back. Good morning. Tell me why you ran away.
Because his brother was there, and I was just like, I can't do it. I was shaking and crying, and I told, my real mom and my stepdad, I don't feel comfortable, I'm scared, I don't want him to be here, and they let him stay. And I just couldn't do it.
Okay, but you're with your cousin now. Mm-hmm. Which leads us to another thing. Have you told the baby's father yet?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that go?
He was happy about it and everything.
So he's going to be supportive?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you're in a safe place. You have what you need. It's all good by me. I just need you to be working on your credits and getting a diploma then. Okay. We love you.
Love you too.
All right, give me a hug. If you need anything, how are your credits?
It really helps coming here. I have 30 credits left. I could get it done in a credit check and a half. It's just, oh my God. I'm 17 and pregnant. What am I gonna, I'm not even out of high school.
Hey guys, time for first period, please. Let's get going. Oh no.
So, you get this one? Mm-hmm. And you understand about how to do these?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any more questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I feel happy when I'm doing my homework because I know that it's getting done, and I'm just one word closer to graduating every time I write a word on my homework.
Earning 19.1 credits, Caitlin Jeffries. Soon to be a graduate.
And it's nice because it's like, I'm getting it done. I'm gonna graduate.
I've learned to look at everything with a I can instead of a I don't know if I can.
Are you done?
Because if you say I can, then you can. And if you put your mind to it, you can do it.
I want to go into cosmetology because I know after I get my nails done, my hair done, my makeup done, I just feel like I'm the most beautiful thing in the world. I'm Queen Sheba. I sit there and I imagine, like, if I can make one person feel like that every day, like, that just makes up for all the crap that has happened in my life. The diploma means that you've survived the first, years of your life with school. Now, go out and get more education and get a job. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving me this beautiful day and blessing me with all these beautiful things. And just please remember to wake me up in the morning. That's all I ask.
Caitlin's story is really, really powerful. Obviously, they all are. I did not mean to do that. But the one thing I do want to say that that is so prevalent in our situation with our young pregnant ladies is that they're teenagers taking on adult responsibilities. And if they are not prepared to take on those responsibilities, then we hope that there is a community support system out there that can help them do that, especially when maybe mom isn't present, which clearly mom wasn't present, but she did have a trusted youth influencer in her life. And that was the people that she knew at school. Okay, so we're getting close to where I want us to do our quick little respect lab. So I do just want to say that there's obviously 21st century solutions-based approaches that help divert recidivism for our girls and women. And so once girls and women are justice engaged, right? Like, so here, before they were at BlackRock, right? They're in school. So now what happens when they're justice engaged, and how do we break these cycles of generational incarceration and generational recidivism? Well, first, we need to provide educational programming that helps guide the positive youth influencers, people like you. We want to be able to provide an assortment of different resources and trainings and different things so that we all are equipped to have some level of trauma-informed guidance. And the second is to provide individualized coaching, academic and career and college readiness, and life skills, including parenting empowerment through generational education. We solve generational incarceration and recidivism by generational education. Educate, don't incarcerate. I love saying that. I'm a teacher. Y'all, I had to say that. Okay. So the way that we do this is we take an in-depth look at the root causes of what is actually happening. What are the barriers that are happening for justice engaged women and girls? I wanted to put this here just briefly to let you know. So girls and women on probation and parole or re-entering their communities are particularly susceptible to recidivism, and providing these individualized structures around like coaching, right? Like I know that I see all the time advertised like career coaching, right? Like I could sign up for a career coach, right? Well, our ladies are formerly incarcerated. They need life coaches too, darn it. So, and this chart here, you can take a quick look. I just put it on here because I think it's really important to understand that 73%, now this goes for federal, local jails, state prisons, and federal prisons. 73% of all women who are under correctional control, 73% are on probation. What an amazing opportunity, right? Like here it is, right? We have more people out than we do in for the women on probation. So let's do this. We can do this, right? So anyway, I just wanted to put that graphic there so you can see. Also, probationers have significantly lower levels of academic achievement. We saw this already. One of the fastest growing populations literally in prisons and jails are our pregnant ladies. And also when we think about you can see here, these are the ACEs. Here are some of the reasons why, or what the barriers are for justice engaged women and girls that they have to overcome. And so also just a side note that there are a number of children that go to sleep at 5 million, go to sleep every night with at least with one parent incarcerated. There are 5 million children. You can see here by race, 1 in 9 African-American children will have a parent who's incarcerated, 1 in 28 Latinx, and 1 in 57 white children. So what do we do with this? How are we going to solve these problems? What is a solutions-based approach? Well, some of the approaches don't take students out of mainstream classrooms. What they do is they provide a wraparound, a life jacket is what I like to call it, right? With specialized coaching and academic advising. So one of the organizations, and it's one that I work for and with, is the Article 9 Educational Foundation, the Educational Consulting and their Respect Lab programs. That's one way to do this, and we'll look at that now in a second. Another way to do this, and this is my most recent research. I'm really enjoying this research in that it feels quite fulfilling. When I think about my students and I think about their 30-second sound bites that they usually are willing to listen to, I thought to myself, well, how can I research different ways of diverting recidivism, particularly for our girls and women, and how do I get them to actually follow through, listen to it. How am I going to be able to reach them when they have, their work schedules don't allow them to come into the classroom necessarily? So what I did was I created a podcast, and the podcast is a 21st century approach to solutions-based ideas around ending recidivism. It takes an in-depth look at those solution-based approaches, and it features conversations with both our formerly incarcerated populations and these incredible people who work with these populations. So many of them are in Santa Clara County. However, we have such a plethora of amazing knowledge. When you talk to people who deal with the populations and ask them, well, you see the same students coming through over and over again. What do you think might work? Do you have any ideas? Because I guarantee you, as people see the revolving door over and over again, they even call it the revolving door, right? When we stop back and think about what is the root cause here, right? This is not about excusing the crime, let's say, if they are in fact guilty of that crime, right? It's not about that. This is about equal access to equal education. And everyone deserves that, everyone. Anyway, so what I found here, and again, this is linked in the resources if you'd like to use it. There, you can use them as like an individual type of classroom type of thing, or just for yourselves, right? To gain more knowledge in it. But right now, there are 14 different people in conversation with me in these podcasts who are all members of the stakeholders, and in fact, some are the formerly incarcerated. But right now, one thing I've been able to uncover, it's not really uncovering, it's just stating it in an easier way, is that right now I have identified 14 different obstacles and barriers that really need to be addressed in order for girls and women to break the cycles of recidivism. And in each, instead of me typing it out, I used my voice in the podcast. So in each of the 14 obstacles, there are concrete, tangible, solutions-based approaches to how to lower the recidivism rates. So if I did a 14-point plan on what is needed, yeah, that's a lot of wraparound. But if we get all 14 of those, and I have no doubt there's more, obviously, but if we start to knock out each one of those as we go, then we can actually change the recidivism rate. I seriously, seriously believe this, and I hope you do too. We can change this for the better. Some of the examples of barriers I just put on here just so that you can see some of them. Some of the examples are like the adverse childhood experiences, which we talked about, learning disabilities or undiagnosed learning disabilities, being foster youth, housing insecurities, having a parent incarcerated. Those were some of the ones we talked about, but there are a number of others. So if you're interested in those types of things, you can check this out. And again, it's linked in the resource page, but also maybe in the chat, maybe we can go ahead and cut and paste that in there if you want to. Okay. So for the very, very last part of our presentation, what I am going to do is just allow us to drop into what a social emotional learning lab at the educational consulting group that I'm with it's called Tell Your Truth. That's the title of the social emotional learning labs. I call them respect labs because I often find that people just don't have respect anymore. Like, it's not the status quo to meet somebody on a level of respect. It's a status quo to meet somebody in the level of disrespect first and try and work your way up to baseline. So that is why I call these respect labs, to respect. Look again, respect. Okay. I'm just going to go through this quickly, but basically there's 8 different types of core skills that we work with that are, we also address, and here, I'll put this over here. We address 4 different leadership skills, and those leadership skills are activism and informed action. You can check these out on your own time if you want to. It's just different ways of defining how I use them in the respect labs. Agency and advocacy. So as I had talked to us about earlier, using resiliency research is crucial. I've been doing a lot of strength finders work lately, and that's been a fascinating experience to go through and seeing, like, you know, what are some of my strengths. I actually would encourage all of you to do that. It's an incredible way to also learn about your coworkers, and it's fascinating. So, but resiliency, I wish, like I said to you, I wish that the job application has a section that says, are there any life experiences that make you particularly suitable for this position? Please explain any moments of resiliency. That's pretty neat. Because at the end of the day, the best person to help another person who's on probation successfully complete probation would be somebody who actually completed probation successfully. Resiliency. Okay. In the lab, I just wanted to show you really briefly what the students, what you would have done prior to coming into this last part that we're going to watch. So what my students have done, I'm going to go ahead and use my student Anna, since she is the example that we'll be talking about. So I have an assortment of other students' experiences that are linked into this presentation. So again, you can take your time and look at what other students have done with what they've learned in Respect Labs. So what we do is we do a couple of different activities. This first activity that my students would have done would be to take a walk. I do want to make sure that we understand that walking is not necessary for this, so it's accessible to everyone. However, the point is that people kind of are able to shift or move around a room a little bit so that they can see when they respond to a question, like, have you ever been hurt by somebody in some way where you needed to ask for help? And it's really important for the students to see that so many of them have been in that situation. The point of this, to take a walk, is to understand that you are not alone on your walk. The other activity that we would have done prior to coming into what this Tell Your Truth discussion topic is we would have done a quick activity on recognizing feelings and needs. And so what we did was we created, as you can see in this picture, we created a respect pack, which are the values that we choose to live by when we come into the classroom. And then we put feelings and needs on the other side of the Post-its, and those stay up in the room. Now, what do I do? I'm a history teacher at heart. How do I integrate this? When we do our when we do our intro and exit activity, we ground ourselves in some aspect of what Respect Lab skill we're going to be practicing that day. So tell your truth. Well, in history, it's really an easy way to have students to be able to say, does the history that's written that we're studying tell your truth? Right? And so that's how I would integrate this into my history class. At the end of the day, is history told? Who is history told by? And does it represent your truth based on what you understand, right? So this is what I'm saying, like, integrate this. I'm not trying to dig deep here into your mental health. What I'm trying to do is get us into a place where you can really start to reflect on this. And that's what I want for all of my students. Okay. So these are the discussion questions, and we're going to go ahead and, like I had said to you at the very beginning with my student Anna, who is somewhere in this Zoom room, what we are going to do is we're going to actually watch a session that she did. And I'm so thankful that she was willing to have us do this, because originally we were going to run this all together, but based on the format of the virtual conference here, that isn't really a possibility. So these are the questions. What I'm going to do actually is go ahead and move slides forward here. So give me 1 second for me to do that. And then, like I said, you can come back to what so many of our students, there's different examples of what our students have done with this. Okay, so this is my favorite part of the presentation. This is the end of our presentation. And I'll play it just a little bit of a ways through, so we have like maybe 2 or 3 minutes to be able to ask any questions or comments or things that you may want to say, or if I have some fact checkers, I love those. Those are always fun. this is the Respect Lab. Here's Anna. Anna and I met during the COVID time, as you can see, and Anna actually had a goal on the back of the board. So I developed and created, basically through the partnership of the SCCOE and the Office of Reentry Center, we created a school for probationers and parolees who had not obtained their high school diplomas yet. And so Anna was one of those students, and she was basically my very first student. And on the back, you can kind of see the goal that Anna will graduate this school year. And so we always put goals up on the boards, and then that's what you kind of focus on. So I had the opportunity to record this session. I'm going to play it now for us. And I'd be curious to know what you guys think of this. So here we go. So Anna, then tell me a little bit about part of our school that we do, obviously, in the classes that we do, we like address some of our adverse childhood experiences and then how they've affected us later on in our life, and then also like where we're at right now. So I sort of wanted to get a sense of if you could talk for a few minutes about where you've been, and then we'll do a where you are now, and then we'll do a where you want to be.
I was a victim in this situation when my kids got removed. I went to the police and I reported him because I was tired of the abuse that was going on, with me and also my children, because they were watching all the abuse that was going on in the home. And so I went to the police department. I made a report, and social services came and took my kids because they thought that, I had failed to protect my children. But as much as I tried to tell them that I was the victim and explain to them what was going on, they never helped me. They always just judged me, like, oh, you were not a good mom. You were not this. But I was so young, and 2 kids, not having a job, not having a stable home, since I was young, and not having anything, in my life, and not being able to make decisions. I didn't know how to make decisions, and I didn't know how to work, and I didn't know how to do, the right thing. And so that I think it was really bad for me, because instead of getting the help that I needed, they looked at me like I was a bad one. And so unfortunately, 12 months later, because my kids were underage, they only give you 6 to 12 months to get your kids back. I lost my parental rights at the 12 months for all of the kids.
And how old were you, Anna, at this point?
I was, this was 18, 19, like 19, 20.
Okay.
So 20 years old, I got, and within that time, when I was with Arturo, we had another child, in which he was also taken from.
So you have 3 at this point. At that point, right?
Yeah. Luis Arturo was 3 months old. So at this time, he doesn't remember that I'm his mom. He doesn't even know I'm his mom, because, he was taken very young. And I lose everything. I lose all my parental rights, and I fall into this dark depression because I thought I had lost everything. And recently, last year, we moved to our new place, and so we've been happy. And I got a full-time job. I work at Atria, and I continue to go to meetings, and I'm going to school now. I got back into getting my high school because my goal is to become a substance abuse counselor. And that's what my goal is. That's my long-term goal. My short-term goal is to get my high school and, to educate myself and be a good parent to my children. And then recently I, got my daughter back, the one I had lost many years ago. And, I got her back in my care, and I have 4 children in my care now, and I have a full-time job, and life is great now, regardless of the struggles. And I say life is not easy, And, you know, that's why I continue to go to meetings. I continue to stay in contact with my support group and my sponsor and my teacher, and, you know, just try to have a support system, because, you know, there's some hard times, you know, you might go through, because even if I'm clean and sober, life still, you know, life goes on. You know?
One thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen, because I want to do a couple of the little cool questions on our little discussion card that I shared with you last week. Let me just pull it up here for us. There we go. And then let me present that. Okay, so on the left side, you can see the discussion questions. So
they'll tell the truth. Are they? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yep, that section, exactly. And so you've now talked to us about, like, you know, what's the extremely difficult experience that you've come through, what happened, the tough circumstances in your life that you've had to accept, which we've just heard a bunch of those, and your work to achieve your future goals, which obviously you're enrolled in school and you're getting your high school diploma. And obviously it's never too late to do that. And actually, let me just, let's see here. So I think the question I wanted to ask, okay, if you were to, I think we talked about this a little bit, but I want to know your answer. If you were to write a novel, what would it be about, and what genre of book? If you were to write a book, what is the title of that book, and what type of a genre of the book would it be?
It would be about drama. Drama, you know, like in good part, you know, like drama, and it would be about a bio, like about me.
Mm-hmm.
Would be like drama too, you know. So and then I would call it. I said last time, what did I? Said the I don't remember. Anna's hardships.
Oh, very good, Anna. I like that. I like that. I really like that. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the hardships, the struggles, but I would name it the hardships, Anna's hardships.
Okay, and if you were going to pick any of, this is still on the book thing, if you were going to pick any of your, like, something that with your kids that they have like little bedtime stories, and if you were going to pick one of the stories that you like to say the most to your children, what story is it that you like to tell them?
What story of the little kids book would I pick?
Yep.
Good Night Moon.
Yeah, why do you like Good Night Moon?
It's just a calming book. It just, you know, like it just, like when you're going to sleep, it calms you down. Like, good night, moon. Good night, stars. You're just telling good everybody. And I think that's just really good to just have a quiet and mellow time, you know, with my kids. You know, I read that book to, you know, when Emily was little, 1 year old, she used to love that book, you know, Good Night Moon. And she's just like, good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. And so it's just like, you know, it just reminds them to say good night, and just, it's a good book. I just find it really interesting.
Okay, so I had just really wanted to be able to share a piece of that with you. Obviously, it is not, there's much more that you can see, and actually there's an assortment of lengths of versions of this, because we've been able to get updates from Anna all the way through since I've been working with Anna for a while. And just so that everyone knows, she's enrolled in community college doing the peer mentor drug and alcohol counseling. So her goal that she actually said is the one that she's doing. So actually, let me get this off of here. Okay. And so this is pretty much the end of our presentation. What I wanted to do, we had some connection issues. So Anna, I have Anna actually, and Anna is actually on FaceTime on my phone, and she's been watching this on FaceTime. So I just wanted to just have her just quickly say hello, because she was so willing to do this. So let me see if I can get Miss Anna up here. There you go. Hi, Anna.
Hi. everyone.
I hope everyone can
hear me.
I hope they can hear you, but if not, that's okay. We just want to see your face and say hi.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Nice. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Anna. I'm going to pull this back a little bit so that she can watch further back now, and then we'll go ahead. And that was really the end of our presentation. So these are all linked into the resources. It's just simple things that you could do, the do's and don'ts of how to integrate trauma-informed education into everything you do. The only don't is to ignore it. The only don't is to not address it. Here's our resource page with all of the resources that you already have. It's linked into the presentation. And thank you very, very much for participating and choosing to participate in this presentation. Thanks.
And thank you so much, Lissa. I want to remind everyone that there is a survey option over next to where the chat and the Q&A is to fill out about it, so we can know what's great and what to do next and what to bring to AJFO. So thank you very much for listening, everyone.